Some neurodivergents have a habit of talking out loud to themselves, and to bystanders, this might seem a little bit alarming. Like, do they have a multiple personality? Are they dissociating? Are they hallucinating? Is there some kind of bizarre mental phenomenon going on? And the reality is pretty simple. Many of us, myself included, talk out loud to ourselves because we're processing aloud. Sometimes it helps to get the thoughts out of your head and into the space around you to process and then talk back to them. I find often that I will speak back to negative critical thoughts. I'll have conversations with myself when I'm dysregulated, and this is to regulate myself. This is to process what's going on by externalizing it rather than having it all churning around inside me. To step myself through the problem that's at hand, to problem solve, and then also, again, to process whatever the internal critic is throwing at me. And many of us with complex trauma have this tyrannical inner critic that's constantly attacking us, and it makes sense that we might want to speak back to it rather than just accepting its onslaught of criticisms, which can be ultimately very demoralizing. So I find that if I make a mistake, it's really important that as soon as this critic rears its head, I speak back to it to process. For example, one day I was coming home from school, I had my hands full of stuff, I went indoors, put everything down, and then went, where is my Stanley flask with my tea in it? Oh, I left it in the car. Went out to the car, and then I heard the critic speaking through me saying, oh, you left it in the car because you're such an idiot. And then I replied and said aloud, hang on, everybody does this. I was mindful, first of all, the first component of self-compassion. I was mindful of what I was experiencing in the moment. Then I engaged common humanity. Everybody struggles with this. Everybody forgets things. It's not a big deal. And then I engaged kindness and said, it's all right. No big deal. I just pick up the flask and go inside. I lost, a minute of time just to go back and get it. It's not something that I need to lash myself over. And previously, before I engaged in this verbalization of this internal dialogue, well, there wasn't actually a dialogue. It was just the critic coming at me. Now that I can do that, I can decrease the amount of self-criticism, process through it in a healthy, self-compassionate way, and move on with my day without continuing to perseverate and lash myself about this minor mistake, which most folks who don't perseverate, I'm sure, would not fixate on. But it is a trait of neurodivergence that many of us do perseverate and then get caught in these loops constantly about, worrying about the future, ruminating about the past, and obsessing. And I think when we engage in that dialogue, when we act in a self-compassionate way, we're embodying an ideal parental figure or, attachment figure. And many of us didn't have that kind of figure, so we're learning to embody that, to reparent ourselves through a healthier dialogue that's less critical and more self-compassionate. So where it seemed to be a bizarre behavior from outsiders is actually a sign of growth and maturity, us attempting to self-soothe, to guide ourselves through what might be a distressing experience, to process aloud, to not get caught in these mental loops that we know disadvantage us and do a disservice to us and cause us unnecessary stress. It's a sign of real maturity that we're willing to self-reflect to that extent and to process. It's just that we do it a little bit differently to maybe many neurotypicals do by voicing aloud. And of course, optics matter. If you do this in a crowded room, people are going to get a little bit uncomfortable and look at you askance. So kind of picking the space in which you do it. I often would do it when I was alone at home or when I was with a friend who might understand or a partner who might understand. And then I often give context. I'm like, just so you know, I'm just processing aloud. Don't think anything of it. And just give them context so that they don't walk away thinking that something else might be going on. Do you process stuff aloud? Do you talk back to this tyrannical inner critic that many of us experience? Do you find that this helps you self-soothe, helps you regulate, helps you process whatever's going on and get unstuck from this perseverative thought process? I would love to hear from you.